Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and this is Voice of the Global South, your weekly guide to all the latest news and updates from the Indo-Pacific, Asia, Africa, Latin America and the Caribbean. All right then, let's get started on the show this week. Trump is obsessed with the Nobel Peace Prize. He claims to have ended many wars in the 7 months that he's been in power. So why is a peacemaker-in-chief sending US warships and soldiers to Venezuela? As China becomes increasingly belligerent, the Philippines firms up a defense pact with Australia and ramps up ties with Taiwan, all in a bid to push back against China's coercion and expansionism. And a deep dive into the history and geography of Bougainville, a tiny island in the South Pacific, which could become the newest country in the world. All that and much, much more coming up on Voice of the Global South. Tensions are rising in the Caribbean as US warships close in on Venezuela's shores, prompting a sharp response from Caracas. Venezuela has deployed 15,000 troops to its borders with Colombia, and both US President Donald Trump and Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro are trading fiery words. Is this about cracking down on drug cartels, as the US claims, or is there more to the story? Could the US be eyeing Venezuela's vast oil reserves and large deposits of coltan? A regime change, perhaps? Let's dive into the real story behind this escalating standoff. This week, the US deployed warships and a nuclear-powered submarine towards Venezuela's coast. More than 4,000 US troops are part of this naval buildup in the southern Caribbean. The Trump government says that it's all about fighting drug trafficking, pointing to cartels such as Venezuela's Tren de Aragua and Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, which it designated as terrorist organizations in February 2025, 1 month after Trump was inaugurated. Trump has doubled down, accusing Maduro of running a cocaine trafficking ring called the Cartel de los Soles, or the Cartel of the Suns. The US recently upped its bounty for Maduro's capture to $50 million, calling him one of the world's biggest narco traffickers. In a statement, Trump's press secretary said that the president is ready to use every element of American power to stop drugs flooding into the US. But Maduro isn't backing down. He's called the US deployment illegal and a grave threat to regional peace, accusing Trump of trying to spark regime change. Venezuela's response? Deploying warships and drones along its coastline and sending 15,000 troops to its border with Colombia. Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello insists that this is about fighting drug trafficking too, claiming that Venezuela has seized 53 tons of drugs this year alone.
El presidente ha ordenado un refuerzo operacional.
The president has ordered a special operation reinforcement of Operation Relampago del Catatumbo and has extended it to the state of Táchira with Peace Zone Number 1. In the first phase, he has ordered the deployment of 15,000 men and women on the Venezuelan side as reinforcements. On top of those, we already have up to the border of the state of Táchira. Next will come peace zone number 2 and then peace zone number 3. All of this is on the border with our sister country, Colombia.
El límite del estado Táchira.
So what's really going on here? Let me break it down for you. The US says that it is targeting drug cartels. Now, there's no doubt that the region indeed has a drug problem. Venezuela's strategic location makes it a transit point for cocaine moving from Colombia to the US and Europe. The US government claims that Venezuelan officials, including Maduro, are tied to the cartel of the Suns, though Caracas denies this. But is this just about drugs, or is there a bigger play here? Let's rewind. Now, during Trump's first term from 2017 to 2021, he made no secret of his desire to oust Maduro. He imposed crippling oil sanctions, seized Venezuelan assets, and even backed opposition leader Juan Guaido as the legitimate president. In fact, Mike Pompeo, who headed the US spy agency CIA before becoming the Secretary of State during Trump's first term in office, had publicly suggested that the US spy agency was working to change the elected government of Venezuela. In one of the clearest clues about US meddling in the politics of Latin America, Pompeo said at the time that he was hopeful that there can be a transition in Venezuela. Incidentally, the US has a long history of interfering with democratically elected governments in Latin America, from Chile to Nicaragua and Argentina to Haiti. So what explains the US obsession with Venezuela? Well, for one, Venezuela sits on the world's largest proven oil reserves, more than 300 billion barrels, more than Saudi Arabia. That's not all. It also has vast deposits of coltan, a mineral critical for electronics such as smartphones and batteries. Now, some analysts believe that Trump's moves then and now are about securing access to these resources, especially as global energy demands rise. Venezuela's economy has been in free fall for years, with hyperinflation and shortages driving millions to flee. Maduro's 2024 re-election, which was widely criticized as fraudulent, sparked protests and a brutal crackdown. Trump's renewed pressure, sanctions, bounties, and now warships has fueled Maduro's claims that the US wants to topple him to control Venezuela's wealth. Now, Maduro has even rallied civilians to join militias, saying that no empire will touch the sacred soil of Venezuela.
Miliciana, reservista.
I call on all militiamen, militia women, reservists, and all people who want to enlist and join the ranks of the great national plan for sovereignty and peace. Simon Bolivar.
Plan Nacional de Soberanía y Paz.
And that brings us to the bigger chess game. Venezuela's allies, such as China and Russia, rely on its oil and strategic position. China has poured billions into the oil-rich nation since the 1990s, making Caracas a crucial partner. As for Russia, it signed a strategic partnership agreement with Venezuela in May 2025, the latest in a series of alliances Russia has forged since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The deal marks Russia's fourth such agreement in 2 years, following similar pacts with China, North Korea, and Iran. Now, a US-led regime change could shift the balance in Latin America, but it risks escalating tensions across the region. Now, analysts say that a full-scale invasion is not probable. Public support in the US is low, and Latin American nations are wary of US intervention. On the ground, Venezuelans are skeptical. Many see the US moves as posturing, not an imminent invasion. It could be about signaling to Maduro and maybe China and Russia, who back him, that the US is serious about influence in the region. But with 15,000 troops at the Colombia border and US warships nearby, the risk of miscalculation is real. A single spark, a naval incident or border clash could escalate quickly. So, is this about drugs, oil, or regime change? Likely a mix of all three. Trump's strategy seems to blend his anti-cartel agenda with a broader push to weaken Maduro, while Venezuela's mineral wealth remains a tempting prize. One question remains though. Trump is obsessed with the Nobel Peace Prize. He claims to have ended many wars in the 7 months that he's been in office. So why is the peacemaker-in-chief sending US warships and troops to Venezuela? Now that's a point to ponder, isn't it? In a bold move, the Philippines has firmed up a defense pact with Australia. The agreement underscores their commitment to countering China's aggressive actions in the Indo-Pacific, where tensions have flared following recent incidents. Simultaneously, the Philippines is ramping up its ties with Taiwan. Aman Kumar Himanshu reports on the implications of these strategic moves and their broader impact on Indo-Pacific security.
The South China Sea, a vital artery of global trade, rich in natural resources, and a flashpoint for geopolitical tensions. For years, China's expansive claims and militarization efforts have unsettled the region, sparking concerns from nations far and wide. Now, in a strategic move that could reshape the balance of power in Southeast Asia, Australia and the Philippines have forged a new defense pact to counter China's growing dominance in Indo-Pacific. The agreement, inked during a high-level meeting between the Philippines Defense Secretary and his Australian counterpart in Manila. It aims at boosting operational coordination, joint exercises, and infrastructure investments at 5 Philippine sites. Philippines Defense Secretary highlighted the importance of the alliance for the country's sovereignty and regional stability.
We really need international law to have some parity so that might does not mean right. And we are also used to negotiating in good faith and not with insincerity. And as I've said, much as China professes to want dialogue and negotiation, there is a deficit of trust that they need to overcome. And with these activities that have been happening, that deficit has widened more than lessened.
While Australia's defense minister stressed that safeguarding the Indo-Pacific's open seas is critical not just for their nation, but for the global economy.
We are both countries which are deeply invested in the rules-based order. And we are both countries which seek to work to uphold that order. And we both acknowledge and are experiencing the pressure that the rules-based order is being placed under here in the Indo-Pacific. Now, we work really closely with the Philippines in terms of asserting the rules-based order in the South China Sea and the West Philippine Sea.
Just as Australia and the Philippines move to strengthen their defense ties, China unveiled a new warship designed to launch amphibious landings. This latest move underscores the high-stakes strategic competition unfolding across the region, and all sides ramp up their efforts to exert influence over the vital waters. Ahead of the Mal's visit, Australia and Philippines also conducted largest military exercises involving more than 3,600 military personnel in disputed South China Sea. While adhering to the One China policy, the Philippines has quietly expanded unofficial defense cooperation with Taiwan. This move reflects Manila's increasing concern over Chinese encroachment in the South China Sea. On the other hand, according to Bloomberg report, Taiwan's top diplomat made a rare unofficial visit to the Philippines on Thursday. With limited diplomatic ties, both Taipei and Manila have been quietly deepening security cooperation, including patrols in Bashi Channel and information sharing. Earlier this year, Philippine President Marcos Jr. eased restrictions on official ties with Taiwan, signaling a quiet shift in policy. In response, Taipei extended its visa-free entry program for Filipino travelers by another year. Later on, China accused Marcos of playing with fire after he said the Southeast Asian nation would be drawn into conflict between China and the US over Taiwan. As China's assertiveness grows in the Indo-Pacific, quiet partnerships like that of Taipei and Manila reflect a strategic effort to push back. Yet, the real test lies ahead, whether these evolving alliances can truly deter China's expanding reach and safeguard the vital natural resources and sovereignty of Southeast Asian nations. Aman Kumar Himanshu's report, DD India.
Now picture a lush tropical island in the southern Pacific, home to just 300,000 people, yet poised to make history. Bougainville, an autonomous region of Papua New Guinea, is on the cusp of potentially becoming the world's youngest country, the 194th member of the United Nations, following in the footsteps of South Sudan. But the path to nationhood is far from straightforward. With a critical agreement signed in June 2025 and a presidential election looming on 4th September, the question is, 1. Can Bougainville succeed where others such as New Caledonia, Catalonia and Scotland have stumbled? And 2. Will it outpace Somaliland in the race to global recognition? Let's dive into this remarkable story. Welcome to Bougainville, a land shaped by history and struggle. This cluster of islands lying east of Papua New Guinea's mainland is a place of stunning beauty and deep scars. Its main island, also called Bougainville, is fringed by coral reefs dotted with volcanic peaks and rich in copper and gold. But its history is defined by a struggle for nationhood that stretches back decades. The roots of this quest for independence can be traced back to the 1960s, when Bougainvilleans began questioning their place in the newly forming nation of Papua New Guinea, which gained independence from Australia in 1975. Even before that, in 1968, local leaders proposed a referendum to decide whether Bougainville should stay with Papua New Guinea, join the Solomon Islands, or go it alone. No vote was held then, but the seeds of independence were sown. The turning point came in the late 1980s, sparked by the Panguna copper mine, once a cornerstone of Papua New Guinea's economy, contributing 45% of its exports. The Panguna copper mine brought wealth to the national government, but left Bougainvilleans with environmental devastation and little economic benefit. Frustration boiled over into a civil war between 1988 and 1998, pitting the Bougainville Revolutionary Army against Papua New Guinea's military. The conflict claimed thousands of lives and displaced many more. It wasn't until the 2001 Bougainville Peace Agreement that the fighting stopped. That agreement promised Bougainville autonomy and, crucially, a referendum on independence to be held within 10 to 15 years. Fast forward to 23rd November 2019, after years of preparation, Bougainvilleans finally got their chance to vote. The referendum, overseen by the Bougainville Referendum Commission and chaired by Bertie Ahern, a former Prime Minister of Ireland, offered two choices: greater autonomy within Papua New Guinea or full independence. The result was staggering. More than 97% of the people voted for independence. But the vote was non-binding. It meant that Papua New Guinea's national parliament held the final say. Yet the overwhelming margin made it hard for Papua New Guinea to ignore the result. John Momis, the then president of Bougainville, said at the time that psychologically they felt liberated. But liberation on paper is one thing, turning it into reality is quite another. In June 2025, a significant milestone was reached. After years of stalled negotiations, Papua New Guinea and Bougainville signed what is known as the Melanesian Relationship Agreement. Signed by Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister James Marape and Bougainville's President Ismail Toroama, the agreement charts a path for the referendum results to be tabled in Papua New Guinea's parliament. The agreement acknowledges the legitimacy of Bougainville's 97.7% vote for independence. It calls for a peaceful and enduring relationship between the two. Among other things, it also commits both sides to a public awareness campaign to educate their citizens about the referendum and its implications. President Toroama, a former rebel commander who helped negotiate the 2001 peace agreement, called the signing a defining moment for Bougainville's aspirations. But not everyone is so optimistic. Papua New Guinea's government, led by Prime Minister Marape, faces a delicate balancing act. While Marape has reaffirmed his commitment to the constitutional process, he is cautious about setting a firm timeline for independence. Why? Well, for one, there is the fear of a domino effect. Other provinces such as East New Britain and New Ireland have floated ideas of autonomy. If Bougainville breaks away, it could inspire similar movements threatening Papua New Guinea's unity. Economic concerns also loom large. Bougainville relies heavily on Papua New Guinea for its budget, and the Panguna mine, shuttered since 1989, remains a contentious issue. Estimated to hold over $80 billion in copper and gold, the mine could be a game changer for an independent Bougainville. But reopening it would take years and massive investment. Some Bougainvillians themselves have doubts. Some Bougainvillian officials admit that the region is nowhere near ready for independence. They cite the need for stronger institutions and a viable economy. Then there is the question of the parliamentary vote itself. The Melanesian agreement does not specify whether a simple majority or a two-thirds majority is needed to ratify the referendum. It's a sticking point that could make or break Bougainville's dreams. A two-thirds threshold would be much harder to achieve given potential opposition from lawmakers wary of secession. Bougainville's journey isn't unique. Across the globe, regions such as New Caledonia, Catalonia, Scotland and Somaliland have all wrestled with similar quests for independence with mixed results. In New Caledonia, a French territory in the Pacific, 3 referendums between 2018 and 21 saw voters reject independence, though the process was marred by boycotts from the indigenous Kanak population, who felt that the timing of the final vote during the COVID-19 pandemic was unfair. Unlike Bougainville's unified voice, New Caledonia's divided society and France's firm grip have stalled its ambitions. Catalonia's 2017 referendum in Spain was declared illegal by the Spanish government, leading to a crackdown and the exile of separatist leaders. Despite strong regional identity, Catalonia's push lacks international support, a hurdle Bougainville may also face if Papua New Guinea delays or denies ratification. Scotland's 2014 referendum saw 55% vote to stay in the UK, but the issue remains alive, with Brexit fueling calls for another vote. Scotland benefits from a stable economy and global recognition of its cultural identity, advantages that Bougainville lacks. But Scotland's dependence on the UK approval mirrors Bougainville's reliance on Papua New Guinea's parliament. Somaliland, a self-declared state since 1991, is perhaps Bougainville's closest parallel. Despite functioning as a stable nation with its own government and currency, Somaliland lacks international recognition, largely because Somalia claims it as its own. Bougainville could face a similar fate if it declares independence unilaterally, a path Toroama has hinted at if Parliament blocks the referendum. But unlike Somaliland, Bougainville's process is enshrined in a peace agreement and backed by UN oversight, giving it a stronger legal footing. As Bougainville approaches its 4 September election, all eyes are on President Toroama, who is running for re-election on his promise to deliver independence by 2027. His challengers, including pro-China candidate Sam Kwana, reflect the geopolitical stakes. China has shown interest in Bougainville's resources, eyeing it for its Belt and Road Initiative, while Australia and New Zealand remain key regional players. The election's outcome could shape Bougainville's foreign alliances and its readiness for nationhood. But readiness is a concern. Bougainville's budget dependence and undeveloped infrastructure raise doubts about its viability as a sovereign state. However, President Toroama insists that political independence must come first. He argues that sovereign powers will enable economic decisions such as reopening the Panguna mine. Others dismiss the need for economic preconditions, pointing out that Papua New Guinea wasn't economically independent when it broke from Australia in 1975. So can Bougainville make history? Will it become the world's newest nation? The 2019 referendum sent a clear message, and the Melanesian Relationship Agreement has brought it closer to reality. But the final hurdle, Papua New Guinea's parliament, remains uncertain. If ratified, Bougainville could join the UN as its 194th member, a beacon of hope for small nations. If not, President Toroama's 2027 deadline suggests a unilateral declaration might be on the table, though that risks international isolation. Unlike New Caledonia, Catalonia or Scotland, Bougainville's struggle is rooted in a bloody civil war and a legally mandated process, giving it unique legitimacy. Yet, much like Somaliland, it faces the challenge of convincing the world to recognize its sovereignty. Whether Bougainville becomes a new nation or not, only time will tell. For now, Bougainville stands at a crossroads. And it's a wrap. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.